It is good to be back here at Lena Valley, and thanks to all those who have commented and noticed that I've actually had a haircut and my beard has been trimmed, and I'm free from lockdown. It's much nicer when you're actually able to leave your house. If you have your Bibles, we'll be ducking all over the place, and so I'd really recommend you grab the booklet, the Stepping Into Your Calling booklet. We've got copies of it at both sites. Last week we were talking about the first two levels of calling, and today, if you turn to it, it says your specific call. That's what we're bouncing off today. And if you have a device and you have the YouVersion Bible app, the sermon notes today are available, as they always are, on that YouVersion Bible app under where it says events. If you click on that, you'll find a map of Hobart, probably will pop up. And if you click on either Lena Valley or Citywide at Mornington, you'll find the notes there. Looking forward to getting back into the rhythms. We've got our small group starting again tomorrow night. By the way, if you're not a member of a small group, and you'd like to be part of the adventure of working out what it means to live faith in a kind of practical way, we meet at Mornington, 7:30 on a Monday night, tomorrow night. So I'd love to have you along. Last week, we were talking about how for each one of us, there is foundational calls that God has on our life. And the first and most important one is He calls us to relationship with Him through Jesus. And the next one is that we are all called to live the Jesus way. That Jesus came and modelled a way of life, and He said, I've set you an example, do as I've done. And so there are ways of life that we're all to adopt. Then with those two things as the bedrock, it's important for you to hear this, that there is a specific call on your life. There is a specific plan that Jesus has for your life. You'll see there Ephesians 2:10. It's one of the verses, and part of the reason we're doing this, we're just taking a couple of Sundays before Advent to unpack for us as a church, what is the core thrust of what we believe we are called to be about. And one of the core thrusts of what we believe we're called to be about, it is to help you become all that you were created to be. To help you become all that you were created to be. That's my understanding of what the church is meant to be about. We get that from Ephesians 4, where it says that as everybody grows up, and as all the bits of the church do their bit, everybody's equipped for their works of service. And it is important to understand that there is a unique plan for your life that is different than the plan for my life. And one of the dangers can be we can end a cookie cutter kind of thing where we just sort of mass-produce programs and try and get everyone to fit into the right boxes, but there will never be another box that is you-shaped. You are unique. Ephesians 2:10 says, in fact, that you are God's handiwork. And the Greek word there, if you I've been trying to do a few renovations around the house, kinda. Leanne came back and I'd screwed the knobs back onto the drawers that had been off for about, I don't know, a year or so. And she came back and she noticed that while the knobs were sort of at the top of the drawer, the bottom of the drawer was out like that. I tightened up the top, but that meant that the bottom had got really loose. For me, that's handiwork. That's not what the Greek word there in Ephesians 2:10 means. The Greek word there means more like a masterpiece. And so your identity is going to have to cope with this. I know almost everybody has lots of things about themselves they don't like. But the way God sees you, there are two things about you. You are unique. There's never been another you. There will never be another you. and you are his handiwork, his masterpiece. In fact, what it says there is we are created in Christ Jesus to do good works which God prepared in advance for us to do. That before the world was created, God knew you were going to turn up. And he has said, look, I've got an Aaron-shaped plan. I've got a Morris-shaped plan, an Agnes-shaped plan. And for each one of us, this is the question confronting each one of us. Are we going to follow him and build according to the plan he has for our lives? Or are we going to go our own way and build to what helps me, my ego, feel comfortable? And so I just want to we're going to spend some time talking about, in a few minutes, in our discussion question, we're going to ask you, what's your sense of what God's calling you to? But before we do that, there's some things, some real talk I want to have with you about what it does mean to step into the calling that God has on your life and what it doesn't mean. We need to be real about this stuff, because often we can get into some sort of fantasy kind of thing that says that where we mistake God's calling on our lives for some sense of deep inner fulfillment, that where everything just feels right and good, and you know, it's like a fairy godmother kind of thing comes and we get to wear our dress to the ball. No, it's not like that. The Bible teaches that there are some truths about the calling that God has on your life that you need to understand so that you don't get disappointed, but also so you can understand some of the patterns of your life that are already there. The first thing I want to say is, for all of us, the specific calling God has on your life is much more about a goal, or probably a number of goals even, than a role. The number of people I have bumped into who want to be, I don't know, a radio announcer or a pastor or an artist or a writer, and what they're aspiring to is a role. And it never works, because it's all about your identity. Hang on, Siri's trying to tell me something. She can go away. You are not called to a role. You are called to seek first the kingdom of God, and that's going to require you to play lots of different roles. Jesus, actually, at the end of time, there's this picture of Jesus as he sits down and separates the sheep from the goats. This is the story he said. And he said, look, I'm not going to be asking you, were you a good hairdresser or were you a good pastor? I'm going to want to know how you cared for people. I'm going to want to know whether you turned up in the points of pain for people, whether you cared about what God cared about. That for him was the fundamental thing. So up front, we want to say one of the real dangers as we start talking about calling is that you can start to think, I want to be a. And God's calling on your life isn't finishing that sentence. It's about following Jesus and being willing to do whatever it is he has for you to do. And I can promise you, he'll have all kinds of roles for you. Some of them you'll love, some of them you may not. Let's talk about something else. Your calling will come from a spirit-given dream or vision that you'll probably find hard to put words around. And it'll probably be gradually coming to focus as you follow. Because we see in Acts that, as Peter quotes the prophet Joel, He says, in the last days, this is what Peter's saying is happening, God says, I'll pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. And again, the word there prophesy isn't about telling the future. It's about speaking God's truth into the moment. That's what the word actually means. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. Even on my servants, both men and women, I'll pour out my spirit in those days, and they will prophesy. That there will be part of you that you find hard to put into words, that cares about, when you're at your best, there'll be something that you care about and you kind of have a picture of how it could be different. And it'll be different often to how other people care about it, and you will probably find it hard to put it in a neat and tidy sentence. You see, the calling that God has on your life is not easily put into a 3-point plan. He calls you to a dream, to a vision, to something bigger than you. And gradually, maybe as you look back on your life, you'll see the pattern. But in the short term, probably, if you can put what you sense your calling is into a neat and tidy package, it's probably not your calling. It's probably bigger than that. Another thing I want to say, all of us have themes for our calling, and one of the themes is this, that we are to be a royal priesthood. That's about the language of a royal priesthood is called priest. To God, but then also to be representing God to the world. In fact, the Apostle Paul says you are Christ's ambassadors. We are meant to be little outposts. So that's part of, for you, as you step into your calling, you will be about representing God to the world. Now, as part of that, and it may be tough to even come to terms with this, but because sometimes, people are painful. You notice that? Sometimes life is difficult, and really what you'd like to do is slap them around the face, or sort out what's, or fix up all the problems. But in light of what we just said, all of our specific callings are about bringing blessing, not condemnation. All of our specific callings, as you step into the calling God has for you, people will experience you as a blessing. There's a number of verses about this, but this one's fairly pointed. Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing. Because to this you were called so that you may inherit a blessing. So part of you stepping into the calling that God has on your life will definitely be about you going, okay, how do I bring blessing to these people where I am? Another thing, that again, this is where we can easily, when we talk about stepping into the calling God has on my life, we can so easily get this the wrong way around. Because often we can want to make it about me finding fulfillment. Always, you stepping into the calling that God has on your life will require you to die to yourself. Always, the calling, the specific calling has on your life will require you to die to yourself. You know, there's in the notes and in the booklet, I've listed the number of times Jesus says, if you want to follow me, you need to be ready to take up your cross. If you really want to step into the story that is yours, there is this paradox at the heart of our faith. And it is this. If you want to grasp a life that feels good and where everything kind of works for you and your ego, this is what Jesus says here in John. Anyone who loves their life will lose it. Anyone who prioritizes their own life will lose it. But he promises this. If you're ready to take your eyes off yourself and stop fighting for yourself, but put your eyes on him and care about what he cares about, that's where you find your life, on the other side of death. That your calling will always be about being willing to die to yourself. And as I said, Jesus seemed to want to get this one through to us. Basically, he said to us over and over and over again. Matthew 10, Matthew 16, Mark 8, Luke 9, Luke 14, Luke 17, Luke 18 and John 12. Do you think, like every gospel, it's hard to miss this truth, but it's amazing how our society keeps telling us the opposite of that. And as part of dying to yourself, I've already kind of touched on this, but as part of dying to yourself, you will probably need to serve and do things you probably don't want to do. As you step into the calling that God has on your life, you will probably need to do things. In fact, I'll say definitely. Because, look, dying to yourself, you're never going to really want to do that. And we see that Jesus trying to get this through to the disciples in Luke 22. The kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. But you're not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. He says, you know, everybody looks for the hero, the celebrity, but I've come and I've shown you what it looks like to serve, and you're to do what I do. So the great measure of leadership in the kingdom and of stepping into your story is whether you're willing to clean the toilets, I think. If you can think whatever job you really, really don't want to do, whatever thing you really don't want to do, it may not be right for you to do it, but you need to be willing to do it if you want to be a follower of Jesus. You need to be ready to serve. A couple other things I want to say before we move into our discussion. You're going to need fellowship. You will not step into the story that God has on your life and be able to sustain it without friends who know your world enough to be with you in it. That's why we talk a lot about kingdom cells. And if you are isolated, you will veer off the path very quickly. You need fellowship. You need people, Galatians says, carry each other's burdens. You need people who will carry the burdens with you. And let's be honest, we are, as a church, on a journey to work out how to do this. I don't think there are many churches in the Western world that do fellowship well, because it's a bit confronting, because we tend to want to put on a good face. But you will need fellowship. You just will if you're going to step into the story God has for you. Another thing we want to be saying is actually a big part of the impact you will have in the world will actually be as a result of the fact you are deeply connected in a local church where people love Jesus. That Jesus himself said, this is how people will know me. And he says, it's because you love each other. That fellowship's not only important for you, but it's essential if you want to be Jesus' representative in the world. The way you relate to your brothers and sisters in the church should be speaking to the people around you. It's interesting talking to Maggie about when we did the Anzac Day thing down here in Lena Valley, and had just bring some of her friends who aren't regular church attenders, but for them turning up and seeing the church just serving spoke to them, and she was able to have conversations she wouldn't normally be able to have just because they saw the church at its best. We want to be the kind of church where people say, gee, you guys love each other, don't you? I'd like some of that. But like I said, you can't be selfish and have fellowship. It just doesn't work. It's not possible. Just one last thing. And this kind of relates. As you step into the calling that God has for you, it will not be your words that have the biggest impact. We've used this, we talked about this verse a couple of times, 1 Peter 3, it says, be ready to give an answer for people who ask you, why do you have so much hope? To be living the kind of life where people look at you and go, gee, you're hopeful. Why are you so hopeful? It will be your life that speaks. This is what Jesus meant when he said, you are to be to bring out to preserve the world. You are to be the light that helps bring truth to everybody. Your life is meant to be speaking, is what he's saying. We're going to take just some time now to break up into smaller groups. And I just want to ask you, it's okay for us all to be on the journey. And like I said, if you have a really neat and tidy answer about what you think God's specific calling is on your life, you're probably wrong. It's a journey we're all on. But what we'd like you to discuss for the next 5 minutes, and before I have a quick chat to Vicky, and you'll hear some of her story. But for the next 5 minutes, just in your small groups where you are, or if online, I'd love you if you're online to put the comments in the discussion thing there under YouTube or Facebook or whatever you're using. We'd love to hear from you. What is your sense of the specific calling that God has on your life? What is your sense of the specific calling God has on your life? And just talk about that with the people you're with. So in groups of 3 or 4 preferably here at Lena Valley and at Mornington and online. We'd love to hear from you in the comments on either YouTube or Facebook. Love to hear from you. Or on Twitter. So let's go for it. Just a couple of things. If the band wants to come up at Mornington to get ready to finish this up. 2 things. Sometimes God will ask you to do something new. Sometimes God will be asking you to do something new and step into somewhere new. Sometimes as you discover your calling, he may actually, like he did to the people of Israel in Jeremiah, say, no, I want you to stay where you are in exile and seek the peace of the city where you are. He may not be calling you to something new. Your task is to work out what it is. And in the booklet, we are trying to organise our church to support you in stepping into the calling that God has on your life. And there's in edition number 2, we'll put some page numbers on there. But in this edition, you'll see there's a green box there, and there's a list of ways we want to support you in stepping into the calling that God has on your life. We are wanting to realign our church because our understanding is the purpose of the church is to help you grow and mature and to grow fully into the person God created you to be. So Jesus is the center of your life and you are bringing the gift that he designed you to bring into the world. And you are the blessing you are created to be in your family and your neighbours and your workplace, in our city. And we also believe as a church we are called to think much bigger than that. And we've had some pretty exciting stories to tell you a little the last week or two as we're starting to see ways forward in Nepal and other places.